Oh, you're not gonna text back?
Should I? My bad.
You know what's going on, my NIGGA? You know, you my lawyer, right?
I'll hit you up right quick.
Am
Let me
I
do.
am I hold on? Am I Barack or am I Biden?
I mean, what's the difference though?
You know, I don't know. Ask Hunter.
Ask Hunter. Oh, I heard about this story. My guy Hunter.
Yeah,
My guy Hunter. Hunter is like the bros of bros, man. He just wanted to live the lifestyle, man. He would have in a different time. He would have been president of the United States, though.
I mean, if Trump was president, so you never
George
know.
Bush
It
was
might.
president.
George Bush was president as well. Now, the funny thing about this, right? He's not a kid. 'Cause you know, when this stuff like this usually happens, they're like, "Well, he's just a kid,
Right.
young." Well, how old is Hunter? Is like in his 50s, right?
He's like, I think, I don't think he's that old. I think he's like in his late,
Oh,
early 40s, maybe. I think he's in his early 40s.
let's see, because Biden is like 107 years old.
He's 170, so that's
So,
fair. That's
so,
fair.
nah, but for real, Biden's what, 79, 78, 79?
Yeah. Hunter might be in like his 40s.
Let's see, how old is this dude?
Oh, you're right. You called
He's
it.
51. Yeah, 51 years old,
51,
right?
yeah.
So I believe these messages is from not that long ago. So you was a grown man, grown man when you came out with this. Now, to be fair, people say, "Oh, they was joking," and I'm not going to say this the biggest deal in the world because trust me, you're not going to spend all show on this. There's
Good.
much more important issues to discuss.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'd like to just keep it 100 and fair. Now, if this was Trump Jr. or Eric, people would be all over them. But because people love
Fam.
Biden, you know, people want to let it go. Like, oh, he didn't say Nigger. No, he said Nigga. It's different meaning. I hate when white people trying to explain what's the different meaning. Like, yo, shut up.
You're not in the culture, fam. Yeah.
Like The Rock said, know your role. Shut your mouth, jabroni.
Shut your mouth.
Stay in your place. Stay in your place. This is not your conversation. Like, yo, I'll put it like this. If women want to call each other bees and they having the conversations, okay, should we call each other bees? Is it this or that? Or should we call each other H's? You know, that's not for me to get in that conversation. That's between y'all. I'm gonna sit back and let y'all discuss it.
Yeah.
If you know, people LGBT, I guess plus now communities talking about where they want to call each other, you know, F's or Q's. And the reaction, I'm gonna sit back. Okay, that's between y'all. That's not my conversation. I'm not in that group. That's between y'all. So if you white, it's not your place to say, oh, he met a different meaning. Shut up. Shut up. Like, this is not a conversation that you should even be in. Shut up. No.
I mean, you know the power of whiteness, man. They think they can walk into different spaces and just define every room that they're in as and control all conversation and stuff, even though no one's talking to them at all. So, the Hunter Biden is like the bros of bros, man. Like I said, if this was 20 years ago, he'd be like the governor of Delaware right now, and his father would be like Senator Biden, 70 some odd years old, ushering his son into the president of the United States eventually. That's how the world works.
You know, well, there's always like, if you go back to history, because you know I'm kind of like a political history buff. I'm not saying I know all things of all things, but I know more than the average, right? When it comes to this, there's been so many unqualified presidents. Franklin Pierce, you know, who there's been presidents suffering through depression during the time they was president, getting nothing done. All sorts of corrupt presidents, Warren Harding. You know, we could go on and on.
Herbert Hoover, doing everything he can to create the depression. And
you know, but to be fair to Hoover, a lot of people like Calvin Coolidge, who was the president before Hoover, and the Roaring Twenties, a lot of those laissez-faire type of policies in the Roaring Twenties, it could be argued led to the Great Depression because Hoover wasn't even president that long
Yeah,
before the
that's true.
market crashed. So
He
he
just didn't
didn't
do
bring
anything
on.
to. Yeah, he didn't do anything to get outside of it. He just kind of tried to continue the same policies. But you're right.
Right. And even even FDR, right? It was like a lot of it was perception of what he was doing. Um, he felt like he had it under control, but a lot of his policies didn't really work to cure the depression either. But at least
That's true.
it felt like he was doing something. Some of the programs was good, some of them not so good. You had to deal with stuff like discrimination.
Yeah, that's true.
With the New Deal, a lot of black folks, wasn't included in some of these deals.
That's true.
So
That's true.
it
It's
is what
all
it
it's all
is.
fact. Yeah, but like I said, if we're it's like we've America's littered with like unqualified white men running things, and in a different time, Hunter Biden would be like on a presidential trajectory right now instead of
Yeah.
getting caught saying not ER but A, and having a story around that.
And the puzzling thing, his lawyer wasn't black, so just two like dudes, I guess, joking with each other about it.
Just bros
Joking.
being bros, man.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like I said, it's not the biggest deal in the world. There's more problem. We're gonna get to more serious stuff in a second. But it's two things. I find it interesting how people twist themselves into a knot for politics. Like you have a lot of people, a lot of Democrats, a lot of people on the left. I won't even say on the left, really, but a lot of Democrats are trying to defend this for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you have the right going after it like
Didn't
oh,
yeah.
he said this. Like normally they don't care about stuff like this. If it was
Yeah.
one of their guys, they defend it, but they had this thing because they hate the Bidens because he ran against Trump. So now they making a big deal about it. And I don't know, the whole thing is just silly. Like for me, it's like, okay, what do you support? And do you believe this in all situations? Like I have a
Right.
certain set of principles that I apply to everybody, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Right
Mm-hmm.
or right is right and wrong is wrong, in my
Right.
opinion. So my thing is, yes, if it's one of the Trumps, people like a lot of people be making a lot bigger deal of this. I understand people say, well, Trump was racist, which I'll say, yes, I concur. However, it's not like Biden had the best racial history either. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
yeah, it is what it is when it comes to
You know,
that.
it's weird. It's weird too. You bring this up about like Democrats like supporting Biden no matter what. We had a conversation yesterday about this topic, which we're probably going to get into about how like uh different sites, different things we see online about how people are just like defending everything Biden does.
Mhm.
Even when it's like not even kind of fucked up, just like blatantly fucked up and stuff. And we saw it last year during the primaries where the last 2 years during the primaries where uh people were kind of like defending like there was like now like a new narrative around like the around like Biden signed a pending the crime bill in like the early '90s and stuff, or like Biden's like terrible foreign policy record somehow being seen as like expertise in foreign policy. And when I say terrible foreign policy record, I mean like the things he actually voted for during his time in the Senate, not like just stuff that he believes. Like we have it documented. Um, it's politics has gotten to this weird state where both on the Democratic side and on the Republican side, where it's very much a code of personality. And I guess it's always been that way, but I think it's like very pronounced now because of probably social media and because of like mass media in general, where you're seeing people, uh, to be hip hoppers for a second, standing people, instead of like really like being critical about who they believe. So when people are like really riding for Hunter Biden, defending him for using racial slurs at like the age in like this in his 40s and stuff. After in his 40s, he's a Yale, I think, law graduate and all this stuff. obviously, like, he's a qualified businessman, as he said, on like boards for Ukrainian gas companies and stuff. So
Yeah,
like,
I guess he was real qualified for that, right?
exactly. So like, it's this weird thing where people have to like ride and defend for the people, even if they're wrong, and can't be critical of them. And I don't know, when do you think that started? Like, was that like, I just don't know. When do you think that all that kind of like started? I have no idea. Honestly, I can't even tell you. But I'm just curious as to when you like first started noticing that.
Of people writing for their team or call a personality. I think there's always been like that since I can remember.
Mm.
I remember in the 90s when I was a kid, and because my mother watched the news, but they wasn't like hardcore into politics, and just hearing people talk. People was talking about Clinton like he was that dude.
Yeah,
and Clinton policies really wasn't that different from H.W. Bush. Very similar, to be honest. Like, they might have differed here and there in some issues, but George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton policies were very similar, but people liked Clinton personality better. Like, it was Clinton that said, "What, the era of big government is over."
Yep.
It was Clinton that did bipartisanship with the Republicans. The one real progressive thing that he tried to do with healthcare reform, once that got shot down, he basically was a moderate Republican.
Yeah.
It just so happens that you had, Gingrich and the more extreme Republicans came in. So compared to them, he looks like he was in the center. Not knowing that, I know people always use the Overton window, that policies was shifting to the right at the time. So, as far as what Clinton actually did, he wasn't that good.
No.
And I remember even black people, remember at the time, people was calling him the first black president. And I was just like, his policies for black people is horrible.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, I wasn't saying that because I was a kid, but
you
would
have been the smartest kid in the world to make that assumption at like 13 or 14 years old.
You know what? I want to lie and say that I was saying that back then. I wanna do that. Just like, I always thought that, but nah. I didn't start thinking like that until I was what was it? Maybe 20. I started reading a little bit. Maybe 21 and around 21 when I really started to become, politically conscious and started reading and started really going back and digging through these issues. But yeah, at the time I was just going along with the program. Like, okay, yeah, he plays saxophone. Cool.
I hear you. It's real though, man. Same thing, man. Like, I was the same exact way, bro. So like, as a kid, like, yeah, my mom would have like CNN on and we watch it. The thing that really like tripped me looking back on it was just the Lewinsky scandal and how like that happens in 2021. That's looked at totally different versus like how it was back then, where people were blaming her. And granted, Clinton, like, it wasn't a thing that should have been on a national stage, but the treatment of her as like the person what happened to, like, like she was just a 20 some odd, like she wasn't that old at all. Like she was like 20, 21 years old, and the president of the United States is like, asking her to, perform sex acts on her and on him and all that stuff. Like it's kind of like a mind fuck if you think about it. But back then she was blamed for it and seen as the bad person, and Clinton was kind of skating on that. So that's like one trippy thing. And then you brought up like the other thing too. When I was in college, I took a class with a great professor who passed away actually like during that semester. She like died of like liver cancer, unfortunately. And we were talking about that. She was like a real political junkie. She like in her office, she was a black woman, Professor Williams, and she had like buttons from like every single like campaign, I think since like the early 1900s, every single like presidential campaign from like the 1900s onwards, like FDR, Teddy Roosevelt, so forth. And we were just, I would come to the office and just talk to her because like, I was just like, this is an interesting woman. And we were talking about Clinton, and she mentioned in class, like, Clinton didn't do anything for black people. And people were like, eyes gotta be like, what? And she just mentioned like, yeah, during this presidency, like more black men were incarcerated at any time in history of like America and stuff. This is during his presidency.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind a little bit. And I was like talking to her about this stuff, and she was like, "Yeah, Clinton was not like at all for people, and this whole like first black
Yeah.
president thing really bothered me, like bother her."
Yeah, he was able to play all sides. You know, the Sister Soldier moment. They actually made that a turn. You know,
Yeah, it's
and
political term now. It's crazy.
for those of you who don't know, that means that when somebody throws a group or a person that's supposed to be in their base kind of under the bus, and you know, Sister Soldier, she was a black woman, and he did that. So it was just like he was able to get away with a lot until, you know, the '08 campaign, and when Obama ran, we seen how racist he really was. You know,
Yeah.
and it's not
South
just them,
Carolina.
because for those of you who had never watched this program before, I don't want you to think we're one of those secret black conservatives. Oh, we about to get on them too. We about to get, oh yeah, we about to get on conservatives too. So don't get this wrong. This is no light MAGA stuff right here. But we get on both sides.
I'm laughing because I've never heard anybody call me like black conservative or MAGA before.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure, because you know, people, you know, they might hear a little bit and they're like, oh, you criticize the Democrats, you support Trump. No, I hate Trump.
Fuck no.
I hate Trump. That doesn't mean I like Biden, no. Yes, I might think he's a slightly lesser of two evils, not even that much, but slightly lesser. But so we gonna get on them too. But my thing is, I want people to start having consistent standards with stuff. If you believe, like here's the thing, right? I hear some black people, right? I'm just use black people for example. Some of them's actually going towards the conservative way of thinking and be like, okay, well, Republicans is about business and this is this. And sometimes dudes are telling me that with a blunt in their hand. I'm like, you know, most conservatives, if they're not a libertarian, they want to keep what you smoking right now illegal.
Yes.
And not only do they want to keep that illegal, they want to keep the bail system the way that it is, to make it harder if you get busted with that and the cop decide to take you to jail. They want to make it harder for you to get bail.
Right.
So yes, because I know that, because in New York State, the Republicans are fighting to overturn bail laws as we speak right now. They've been fighting to overturn that ever since it's passed. Maybe about a year and a half ago. So yes, you just have to have consistent standards. And also, we was talking about personality. Reagan, like a lot of poor white people loved Reagan. And Reagan was probably the worst thing for the poor of all races in this country.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I will argue ever.
Even like the Gilded Era presidents, like that period in the early 1900s.
Yes.
Damn.
I would argue. Yes, I would argue that too. Even though somebody like William McKinley was just an outright capitalist douchebag. And I hate to say that because he did get assassinated. Like, he got assassinated in the city I live in. You
listen,
you know, but yeah, he not only was he terrible when it comes to like issues of the poor, his foreign policy was probably one of the worst foreign policies of any president too. So, but when it comes to Reagan, the reason why I say Reagan is worse because Reaganomics is still living on to this day.
Yeah.
You know, the trickle down economics, supply side economics. This is still what they going back to this day. And this has been what, about 3 decades worth.
Actually,
over 3 decades.
4 decades now.
Yeah, going on 4. Damn, it's going on 4. Am I that old?
80, in fact, 80, 90, 2000, 10. It's 5 decades. Wow.
Is it 5? Nah, it can't be 5.
It's 5 decades. 80, 90.
He was elected in, he was elected in the 80s, wasn't he? Yeah.
5 decades of this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the 5th. Yeah, it's going on 5th. Yeah. Not. Yeah. Man, that's
We're
crazy.
Still stuck in it. We're still stuck in it.
We still stuck in austerity. And the funny thing is, He didn't balance the budget.
No, didn't even try.
He ran up the deficit. He ran up the debt. He cut taxes, ended up having to raise taxes slightly again because he cut it too much. But the reason why I think Reagan was the worst for poor people overall, he literally convinced poor people what he was doing was good. I think that was the difference. Because I think some of those Gilded Age presidents, a lot of the poor people didn't really care for them as it is. Reagan actually convinced them that this was the right way to go, partly because of the culture war, partly because of the Southern strategy, and partly because of just personality, charisma. He was an actor. He was a, quote, man of mans, whatever that means.
He was in front of people's faces for 30 some odd years too, like as like the pitch man, like for General Electric and all that stuff. Like he was just in front of people's faces all the time.
Right. And he was on the record in the 60s arguing against Medicare.
Yep.
So yeah, I think Reagan. Yeah, definitely think Reagan was probably the worst thing ever for poor people.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm just thinking like those Gilded Era presidents, just because it was that period. But the thing about Reagan that separates him is that they say that these presidencies are like in terms of like eras or whatever. So Reagan was the end of the FDR era presidencies, and FDR was the first one to start really giving American social programs like Social Security, welfare, public housing, things of that sort that, they didn't help Black people at the original intent, but the point is like they were programs that the government funded to kind of give people some safety net if you're a white person. But Reagan came in, and again, these are for white people when FDR established stuff. Reagan came in and was like, yeah, let's start like taking that stuff away. Let's start like also union busting. Let's like make that a thing now.
Right.
Let's stop funding these programs that were helping people, that were helping poor people. And like you said, he convinced poor people that this was the right way. And we've been living in this like hellscape ever since, because unfortunately a lot of poor people either bought into that hook, line, and sinker and either like died off, unfortunately, because they couldn't get health care or eat or nothing like that, or they just like divorced themselves from politics, period, because they realized like, man, I this is every president we have, my life hasn't changed, so why would I even like get involved with this stuff anymore? Because my life hasn't changed at all. And so we've been in this really like kind of like spiral state since then. So yeah, I would agree with you. I think that Reagan probably was the worst president for poor people of all time, and every president since him has only like worked to either needle at it a little bit, or like Trump go all the way and just like turn the water to high instead of like slowly boiling us. He just was like, nope, we're gonna put this at high so y'all can like feel it right now.
But you know what the thing is, Trump wasn't exactly like Reagan. Trump really didn't have an ideology.
No.
That was the thing about Trump, because he went away from a lot of the stuff conservatives claim they care about, but because Trump said it and was a call to personality, they followed it. It's like it's crazy. But since Reagan, even the Democratic presidents that we had, it was Clinton, then Obama, now we have Biden. They differ from Reagan, a little bit, but really not all that much. Foreign policy is not really that different than Reagan's foreign policy. Domestically, okay, they might have a little bit more Keynesian economics, but it's still not where it needs to be. They still concerned with the debt and deficit, and at this point, we need to be concerned with just society,
right? And
how we're gonna get society together. One thing I wanted to talk about, and today we just kicking it. I was listening to NPR, right? And they was talking about how democracy is slipping away from us. And we might go into a point, especially with these new voting laws, that we have a quasi democracy. It's democracy on the surface, but when you dig deep, it's not really because the elections is kind of fixed, and you tap the electoral college with the power of these small states in the Senate. You know, it's not really a democracy, and because you have the Trump supporters, and like 60% of Republicans think that the election was fraudulent, and they want to do other stuff. They just want to make their self win over and over, no matter what the cost. So it's not really a democracy. And I agree with it. And I think that's an interesting point. The only thing I want to say is that we never really lived in a democracy here.
Wait a minute, what?
We never really lived in a
We've
democracy.
never lived in a democracy.
No.
But black people were able to vote.
Yeah. We was able to vote. We just had, once slavery was abolished, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was established. Sure, black men could vote if your grandfather was able to vote with the grandfather clause.
But he was a slave, so you couldn't.
If you had the money to pay a poll tax.
Because you had money after slavery, right? Because you were working. Yeah, okay.
Maybe if you could pass a literacy test, and not just saying,
but you couldn't read
how to read, but maybe you could recite the Constitution word for word. That was part of the literacy test. Maybe you could vote. And if you could do all that, if you could survive, if you was on some, superhero type stuff,
the greatest slave ever,
avoid getting lynched.
And
avoid getting lynched. Yeah, maybe you could vote.
Okay, that makes sense. Somehow you're able to have money as a slave, and somehow you're able to read. You're the like the literal magical Negro if that happens.
Right, and I think we talked about this a little bit in a previous show.
Mm-hmm.
How was we ever democracy when this country was formed, where people of our shade and our hue couldn't vote, but even women couldn't vote, and even poor white people couldn't vote. If you wasn't a property owner, you couldn't vote when this country was started. That started during Andrew Jackson. Like Andrew Jackson presidency was the first presidency where all white men could vote. And good God, what a bad decision. But I guess for them it was good. For them it was good. It was a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But and then it went to the point, like I said, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, 14th Amendment, 14th Amendment, I guess reinstated us as citizens. 15th Amendment allowed us to vote, but with black men to vote anyway, but really couldn't vote most of the time, especially after Reconstruction. Reconstruction ended, that was through. But then you had to go into a whole nother century before women was allowed to vote.
That's right.
Before the civil rights era started, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, where black people could vote on regularly everywhere. But then you get to the 2000s where they already eroded parts of the Voting Rights Act. I mean, this is nothing new.
It's funny too. So last year during the elections, people were like pointing out the lines to vote and stuff. And because we're Americans, we don't really have long-term memory. We don't have memories that's like even longer than like a couple weeks or so. In my head, I was like, didn't that happen like in 2016 to 18? Like the same long lines in like Georgia, for instance, that they were always harp on happened back then. And it only became a story, I guess, last year because of Trump and I guess COVID as well. And so people were complaining about it. But I was like, this happened in 2016 and 18. And on top of that, go ahead. No, but yeah, on top of that, like we mentioned before, the voter ID stuff in Wisconsin and many other states that were starting, and like during President Obama's presidency. This is even before they gutted the Voting Rights Act. These happened like I think like Scott Walker put this in like 2009, like the voter ID stuff. So like, you know what I mean? Like the fight to vote for not just black people. That's like let's also kind of mention that like it's not just black people that had to fight the vote. Like women couldn't vote until like the 1919 when suffrage happened, suffrage. So like this isn't just a black people thing. Like this is just a fight to vote for anybody that's not a rich white man. And right now they're trying to I keep saying they're trying to take it back to they are really originalists to the Constitution. They want to take it back to that period where white men that have money could vote. That's all they want. And yeah, the fact that our elected officials aren't that urgent about it and rather protect the filibuster over protecting votes and maintaining democracy is disgusting. But like you said before, we've not been a democracy. Even the electoral college that we have now, it's not democratic. It's not a democratic system.
Right.
No country around the world, I think only the Philippines is the only country in the world that follows our perfect union. You know what I mean? Like no other country follows this type of government because it doesn't work. It's inefficient, and we're seeing that right now with everything.
Yeah, and their argument is, oh, get rid of the filibuster. Power will swing so rapidly back and forth. Like all these excuses is BS.
Yeah,
because the Republicans going to do what they want to do anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, it never been like what Mitch McConnell did in stealing that Supreme Court seat. That never been done before.
mm-hmm.
They didn't use regular order to pass the huge tax cuts. They just did it.
Mm-hmm.
If they really want to do something, they just go and do it.
Yeah.
So it's just like I'm not really trying to hear that. It's an excuse for the Democratic Party not to do what they need to do.
I'm still. I think we talked about it last week, but I don't know how they can go to black voters after record turnout last year of black voters and say, "Hey, vote for us. We didn't do anything for you last year during this Congress correctional session, but vote for us." People aren't going to vote for that, man.
Well, they're gonna go to a bunch of different voters and say that, and it's just not gonna work because people are looking for results right now, and they already dropped the public option. Mm-hmm. And even if you're not going to do a public option, they really literally doing nothing on healthcare right now.
They haven't talked about it.
The only discussions I hear is maybe taking Medicare down to 60. I mean, that's worse than Hillary Clinton's proposal. Under Hillary, the proposal was to take Medicare down to 55, 65 to 55. So it got worse.
Yeah, when we do the shows, like I just be sitting there thinking like myself, like what do they how do you think that people are going to vote for you when you don't do anything?
Right.
Like you remember in January, look at. Oh, well, go ahead. I was going to just ramble. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, they could do that because I want to get into the main topic in a minute. Mm-hmm. It's kind of because of the class wars. When they could put the classes against each other, it makes it easier for them to do certain stuff, right? We wanted $15 an hour minimum wage. I really didn't, because I think just having a random number like $15 an hour is really not the way to go about it. I think it should be based on the area. What is the real living wage in your area? In some areas it might be lower, in some area it might be higher. Mm-hmm. Is $15 an hour really a living wage in New York City? No, can most people live off $15 an hour in DC?
No, hell no.
So that's really not a living wage. I mean, it's a start, don't get me wrong, and that's the number people have rallied around. I'm not against it, but for me, it should be about your area. Maybe in a lower cost area, I don't know. Let's just say, I don't know the cost of living in rural Alabama. I'm not really sure, but maybe the cost of living is a little bit less. Maybe in rural West Virginia or rural Mississippi, maybe the cost of living is a little bit less. I haven't studied. I'm just throwing that out there.
Maybe Maryland.
It doesn't. Rural Maryland.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't need to be $15 an hour there. I don't know. Maybe a living wage might be $12 an hour there. To me, that makes much more sense than just having a $15 minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And I get it. You want to have a baseline. It makes it easier. Federal minimum wage is this, but this country is so diverse, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Just like with cutoff points, right? If people talk about these tax rates, okay, you tax after, I don't know, highest tax rate maybe 250,000, right? 250,000 in Wyoming and 250,000 in New York City is two different things.
Word.
Like, so cost of living need to be factored in these decisions. But I know I got kind of in the weeds of that. But the point was, most
Nah,
most
it's true. Yeah, you're right. Like that's you have to be like you gotta be directed with what you're asking for in these things, because that's how you get people on board for stuff. That's how you build coalition. That's how you get people to see like, okay, this makes sense for me, in my area. So yeah.
right, and not only if you're going to advocate for $15 minimum wage, you need to make sure along with that, it keeps up with inflation. $15 minimum wage from here, or the equivalent, we should say equivalent to $15 minimum wage going forward. So if cost of living go up, the minimum wage needs to go up.
Yeah.
Because the minimum wage haven't kept up with where we were, in the 60s. Is way behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, the 60s, the late 60s. Yeah.
But the main point is, okay, as a rallying point, progressives in general rallied behind $15 minimum wage. That was cut out. And the reason why I wanted to talk about these class divisions and class wars, because I have talked to multiple people that would be considered quote unquote middle class, and it's just not a black or white thing right now. This is just middle class folks in general. A lot of them scoff and actually offended at the idea of the minimum wage being $15 an hour. And now I say that, of course, I don't mean everybody in the middle class, but a good portion of people I've been talking about, I've been talking to, and I'm in position where I talk to a lot of people in the middle class, and I talk to a lot of poorer people, and I talk to a lot of working class people. It is just amazing the difference. Why do you think that so many people that's in the middle class actually are offended at the idea of $15 an hour minimum wage?
It's a lot of reasons, man. First of all, in America, let's like go back to education. In America, you don't learn about class at all. Like that's just not a thing that it's really discussed. Which is why there's that like joke about it, all Americans thinking, everybody that's not in the 1% thinking they're temporarily embarrassed millionaires that are going to eventually become millionaires. They're going to get their status back as millionaires again. They're just right now like going through hard times or whatever, and the hard times being that we're actually living our lives and never going to be a millionaire. I think that when you like think about it like that, and first come to the thing that Americans aren't ever taught like class levels and class status, and things are broken down like that. I mean, you look at like when people run for elections and stuff. Everybody talks about we need a strong middle class, we need a strong middle class, and only the middle class is the only focus. Even though they're doing policies for the wealthy, it's only middle class that's focused on. There's never, Bernie was like the only candidate that talked about the poor in this country even a little bit. He didn't probably do enough himself, but so when you gotta first start at that basis. The second thing is that because we're a nation, we don't think about class solidarity, and we're a nation that prides itself on individualism. You have people that look down on people beneath them all the time. So the middle class looks down on the poor, and then a working class, the really like working class people, and then the working class people look down on poor people. We're always looking down and discuss and not wanting them to get to our level. We're always trying to stomp them out and not trying to have them come up to our level or exceed us. But it's always like they have to stay where they are. I'm going to rise up here. And when you have that like level of like everybody like being disgusted by what's going on beneath them, and not wanting and not wanting them anybody else to come to that level, and you keep stacking that to like the middle class, upper middle class, then the rich, then the super rich, then the super elite. It just keeps going like that. Like Jeff Bezos probably scoffs at like Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboy owner, for instance. He probably looks at his wealth and be like, I don't want Jerry Jones on my level at all. He's disgusting. You know what I mean? That's just the American mindset, is that we're always looking down on those that are beneath us. And so when you don't have class solidarity, you don't really understand class to begin with, and like you want to keep what you have and are aggressively individual. You want to keep what you have. you have people that'll say like, yeah, I don't want people who have $50 minimum wage. They can. That's ridiculous. They're flipping burgers, and it's like, so what? They're flipping burgers. They're doing a role they need to live. Do you not want them to like have housing? Do you not want them to eat? Do you not want them to have some type of dignity? And the answer is no, because they want to keep what they have. And the sick thing about it, in my opinion, is the money they're protecting. The thing they're protecting isn't even like their own money. They're protecting McDonald's money, for instance, or Burger King's money, or Kroger's, or Safeway, or Giant. They're protecting that or Shop and Save up in New York. They're protecting that money. It's not your money. This isn't going to your pockets. I mean, I guess you can say like, if you raise wages somewhat, then the cost will have to go to food. But even then, I'm not sure about that, because these companies are making such huge like profits off of what's going on, that maybe they actually can stand to like lose a little bit of that to pay their workers. So yeah, I just think that Americans are so aggressively individual and so are disgusted by those that are beneath them or below them in the class level, that like they scoff at people at people just wanting to make a decent wage for themselves so they can live with dignity. It's just been a thing since we talked earlier about like rich landowning white men being able to vote, when this country was formed. It all goes back to that, and it all goes back to us not like really having any like real class solidarity and just being aggressively individual.
Right, and I think it kind of has something to do with just people's late to catch up with the trends, right? Because I remember like when I was growing up in the 90s, $15 an hour it wasn't like great, but it seemed pretty decent. It was like, okay, that's okay. Even maybe last decade, starting out entry level job, getting into career, $15 an hour seemed like, okay, that's decent to start off with. So, but now, because the cost of living have went up dramatically.
Yeah, it's
just in a few years. $15 an hour is not what it used to be. Like, it's only a little bit over 31,000 a year.
That's if you work 40 hours a week, yeah.
And that's if you work 40 hours a week. And I think because we grew up with the mindset, okay, entry level jobs might be 25,000 a year. Which is nowhere near 25. It was nowhere near like $15 an hour. So I think some people still have that mindset. I think part of it is that, and part of it is if you in a bad situation, it just a lot of people think you put yourself there.
Yep.
And because we all know people that are quote unquote lazy as well, or quote unquote don't work hard, don't really want to do stuff. I think we all know people like that, but that's not everybody that's poor. Sometimes it's situations. Some of the smartest people I know, I was talking to a guy today. We were just chopping it up. I was in the community talking to a homie. Dude had like mad weed on him. I was talking to him, and he literally had a blunt in his hand. But dude was really smart, really smart guy, and he was just telling me his story about what happened. Smart individual. He didn't even make it to high school. He dropped out before high school.
Damn.
Yeah. Like he, got in the system. He was telling me over and over again, like how long he been in the system, in and out, and how hard it is to try to start it when you even want to get legit. And people say, well, you shouldn't have made that mistake when you was young. And I'm just saying,
cool. Which is a cool thing to say to somebody.
And on top of that, like, it's easy, like, because I could have been in the very same situation. And I think that's why I have a little bit more empathy for it, because I look back, I'm like, yeah, I see how that can happen. And I see how somebody could end up in those situations. And just, and then in certain places, it's just a lack of opportunity. The education is not the best. A lot of stuff is just easier said than done. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't work hard. And at the end of the day, yes, it is up to you as an individual to get yourself together, because it is a cruel world. And especially as a grown adult, people's not going to have sympathy for you. So I'm not saying just wait and have the government do everything for you, because you're going to be waiting a long time, might be waiting forever. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we shouldn't fight for basic reforms to give people a chance to make it out of situations. Like,
another thing,
that doesn't mean people shouldn't. Doesn't mean people that's working, or even if you're not working, shouldn't have access to healthcare. When I say access to healthcare, doesn't mean you have access to go in the market and buy it. It means that everybody should have healthcare, no matter what your income is.
Word. And it's one thing you brought up there that's like really important is your environment and stuff. The other thing that Americans we fail at with these things too is that we have no idea how other people are living really. The same way, like that story came out yesterday about all those billionaires not paying taxes. Like I think Warren Buffett's paid like $100 million in taxes in like the last like 10, something really paltry. Like he's worth I think over $100 billion, but he only paid like $100 million in taxes over the last like 10 years or so. But but that number I can't even compute his net worth. Like I don't even know what that means to see like the money he has. But I say that to say that like, you know, Warren Buffett may not know what that brother you're talking to today, how he got in the situation. He has no idea like how he got there. And in America, your zip code can determine so much of where you are in your life and what's going to happen to you. It's like the best determinant of where you're going to go. So if you live like in an area that's like, you know, very affluent, the odds are that there isn't going to be a major police presence in your community. You know, the whole defund the police thing. If you live in suburbia, like in a really like suburban enclave where there's like you know, single family homes, so all that stuff, there's not police there. Police aren't in those areas at all. Like they're not that like they're not there unless they see somebody that doesn't belong, then they'll show up and stop them, whatever. But most often they're not like really prevalent there. And so a person could like walk around with like a blunt in their hand in these areas and just be totally free. And no one's going to bother them because there isn't a police presence there, because they're not going to harass them because they're not in your face. Whereas if you grow up like down here, like in Ivy City, which is like a neighborhood in Northeast DC, or Trinidad, which is another neighborhood in Northeast DC, or you know, Anacostia, or even like where I grew up, like in PG County, police are going to be there, and they're going to see you with a blunt in your hand, and they're going to like press you, harass you, and try to put you in jail. Americans don't have any idea of how other people are living because we're so segregated and segmented from each other. And that goes back to like why people aren't sympathetic to that. Like if to people making $15 an hour, like they don't know, if you're in an affluent middle class environment, you have no idea. You may not have any idea how to get to that point, or you may have been born in that position and got out of it, and you're not like really conscious of like all the fortune that you had in your life that got you to that point, and aren't aware that, you know, that person may have like made, you know, you may have gone right and that was perfect for you. That person may have slightly veered left and they end up like incarcerated. They end up pregnant with a child and now like a single mom. You know, they may become a drug addict. You know, these things that a slight veer and it could set your whole life to a different track. And we as Americans, because we live in like such different spaces, we just don't have any conscience to that. Like I don't know how it is to live in Wyoming. You know what I mean? I don't know how it is to live in North Dakota. And somebody in North Dakota has no idea what it is to live like in DC. And so it's hard for us to see ourselves in these different positions and understand like and have empathy as to why like a person could end up in the situation whereas you're here. It's just the way that America set itself up. It's really important. It really does a job of like separating us and making us just think for ourselves, think as individuals.
Right. And I think a lot of people think because a lot of these minimum wage jobs, you don't need education, think that they don't work hard. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. Now, it might be easy to get into, and the job itself, what you're doing might not, you know, be rocket science or anything like that. But doing some of these jobs is, especially like this manual labor, it
Yeah,
can be
man.
hard on the body. I mean, is a lot of these jobs is not really easy to do.
No, no.
So I think that's another misconception. I think I told you this the other day. I used to work at a company a few years ago as a second job just to make some extra income. I worked there a few months,
Mm-hmm.
and I was amazed at how little they was getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
Like I came in, I wasn't looking for the biggest stuff because it was just chump change to me, really. I don't want to say chump change, but it was
It's the secondary
money.
income. Yeah,
Right, right, right.
yeah.
And they started me off at more money than some people that was working there for 3 years, which I was like, I couldn't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, really? I didn't know that. I started talking to some of these people, and it's not like they started me off at a lot of money either. What year is this? This might have been around 2013, maybe
Mm-hmm.
2014, maybe something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I'm getting the years wrong, I might be off by a year or two. But anyway, point is, like, I think I got started off like a 970 at that position, and you had people there for like 3-4 years. They was getting paid like 935
Mm.
an hour. And what we was doing, it was like manual work, stocking shelves, carrying heavy items to where they need to be, so on and so on. It was an overnight position, and they just wasn't getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
They just wasn't getting paid what they should be getting paid. And like I said, it was taxing on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these people was getting paid 935 an hour.
Yeah, man.
And it wasn't like it was just, for me, it was just a second job, but for some of them, this was like their main income.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, nobody's saying I don't think they should have a mansion. I don't think they should have like, a yacht or anything like that. We just saying they need to get paid what it would cost to afford decent housing in the
Mm-hmm.
particular area if you're working full time. That's it.
Yeah,
I
just
don't think that's
dignity.
that much. I don't think that's that much to add or crazy.
It's
I just
dignity,
don't think
man.
that's crazy.
It's just giving people dignity. That's all. That's all it is. Like, you get it's dignity. That's like the only thing that it is. Like, give people a chance to live like a life with dignity. And like, we're not. Nobody's saying give them a mansion. No one's saying
Right.
like you said, fill their refrigerator with like all the foods in the world, all the finest lobsters and all that stuff. Just give them
Yeah.
dignity. That's all people want. Like, that's it. Like you mentioned the job. Yeah, like I remember the stories about Uber drivers. They would drive like 11 hours a day, destroy their cars, and be in a car all day as well, which isn't good for your body either for
Right.
circulation reasons. And also, you're eating like just really
Fast
bad food
food.
because
Yeah.
you're on the go all the time. And you're making, and you might do like however many like rides and so forth, and you may come home with like $200 that day after working like 10, 11 hours. That's
Yeah.
insane. That's insane, man.
It
Like that
is.
doesn't even make any sense. And that's the state of so many people in this country where they're working super hard, working many long hours, destroying their bodies only for, a pittance.
Right. And
It's a
the
pittance.
company I worked for, it's a billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
It was a billion-dollar company, and the very first training we had was an anti-union training.
Mm,
And don't get me wrong, I don't think unions are perfect, and sometimes it's problematic. But yes, union workers usually do increase wages,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of these companies need a union. That was the very first training we had. Was if you see a person trying to start a union here, let us know. And that was I was like, wow, this is the first training here.
Yeah.
And then coming to find out how much money these people was making, I was like, huh, okay. I'm going to save the money I need to save, what I want to get, and yeah, I'm out. This job is crazy. And then if you work some of these big like packaging jobs, something like Amazon warehouse,
Mm-hmm.
or UPS warehouse, that's very taxing.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard for your body. You don't really get breaks. You moving packages. You on your feet all day. I mean, is it like work where you need to bust your brain, maybe not, no, but it's still tax and work. And again, these very same people don't have good health care
Mm-hmm.
either. Some of them, they employ some of these people just enough where they don't get benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, then it's forced. We might as well have universal health care because a lot of people is forced to get on Medicaid anyway because these jobs is not hiring them. They hiring them maybe right below 30 hours where they don't have to give them benefits, and then they end up on Medicaid.
Yep.
And then you're wondering like, okay, why you on Medicaid? Why you government and you leeching off the system? It's just crazy. What people think in reality is just totally different.
It's all by design. Like when the greatest expansion of the American middle class took place because of like labor actually like realizing their status and like them or hate them, unions like help further that on and help people make demands of like of the ownership class and getting money into their pockets and so forth and getting benefits and so forth.
Yeah.
And as that's been destroyed pretty much since Reagan, like we mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
wages have been stagnant.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm not like you said earlier. I don't think that like unions and stuff are like the answers to everything. But they are an answer, and they're a much
Right.
better answer than what's going on right now with workers' rights and so forth. And it's just been a constant thing the last like 40 some odd years where it's been a fight to the only people that are class conscious and that actually are fighting the class war are the wealthy. That's like and it's not a race thing either. Like racism is very critical to me. I never want people to like to think otherwise. I'm black, so yeah, it matters. I this country won't go anywhere until like it really like atones for the sin of slavery. Like it's never going to like really go as far as it wants to claim it as and so forth. However, I'm also a person that says race is important and class, and workers' rights. I know they have the Prozac that is currently like in Congress right now, but that has like no chance of like passing at all during the session of Congress,
Uh,
even if like it gets uh, I doubt it's a priority for Joe Biden at all, and I don't think
it's not.
any Democrats even like considering this as like a serious thing whatsoever. But things like that are how like people are able to like live a dignified life doing like small jobs and be able to afford healthcare and other benefits just for working, which is how it should
Now,
be.
now before we get out of here, I just want to talk about bridging the gap. You mentioned two things. Yes, class and race is both important, and I have criticisms of certain groups, right? I see a lot of progressives. They
Hmm.
kind of want to leave out race. And yes, class is a big issue, but when you poor and black, it's a whole different issue as well.
Exactly.
So it's like race is still a big problem. And like you said, I think some of the class issues, especially some black people in the middle class, really don't appreciate and kind of look down at poor black people as well. And they kind of get into this classism realm as well.
Hmm.
And sticking like looking down at the poor from time to time. It's a big problem. And I know a lot of them will retort, well, a lot of people in the poor is crap in the buckets. I know you heard that a lot, or they don't
Hmm.
want you to move out. They don't want you to progress. So how can we bridge this gap?
If I had that answer, man, like everything would be moving in motion like it's supposed to be. But I just think the biggest thing is like you got to start saying the issue is that and people like me and you got to start saying
Hmm.
it's just not race and it's not only like class. There's a reason why white progressives are so gung ho on like class and ignore race. I mean, we saw with the Bernie Sanders campaign, they don't have they're white. They don't think about race at all. It's not in their mindset whatsoever. And there's like you said, a bourgeoisie black class of people that are concerned about getting their promotions at their organization and that's it. And they want to use race as a reason why they haven't. That's all they care about. They don't care about their colleagues that are working and making less than them. They don't care about uplifting them. They just care about making sure that they get their status. I think that what needs to happen is that people like us on these platforms, we need to start having discussions about race and class and putting those two together and start using the words of people like Dr. Martin Luther King or like W.B. Du Bois who are like articulating like the struggle for race and class and how like that stuff like they both intertwine and they both matter and we need until we start pointing out that like a large portion of Black people are poor. That's the only way. And as Black people, we need to start like thinking like that as well. It's not politics basic, but a lot of us unfortunately like see the wins of like people like Jay-Z or our capital class like Jay-Z, Oprah, Beyonce, or whomever else that are like uber wealthy and have made their billions. We see their wins as our wins, and I'm always just like, nah, man, that's their wins. That is not our wins. Like they've done that, and that's great for them, but they don't give a damn about what's going on in your life. They're not trying to uplift your station. They want to keep accumulating more for themselves, and we need to start thinking that like the wins of even like a President Obama. His win is not our win. There's more we need to press these people on and try to get what we were owed and we deserve. They won the system. They won the game. They don't need to do any more. But now we have to like start asking for more ourselves. And like I said, I don't have the answer to that conundrum because, like I said, if I had that answer, things would have moved. But me personally, I when I talk about race, I also bring up class. When I talk about class, I also bring up race. That's the only way we can, at least in my world, I can start like getting things moving. And I when I talk to like people that are running for like political offices, like friends of mine that are like running political office, I'm like, all right, so what are you gonna do about the race and class problem that's going on in your jurisdiction? Because they both matter.
I think it's not a easy question. It's kind of a loaded question a little bit, but for me, it's just talking to people and just getting out there and to the community and just talking to every class. Now for me, it's kind of hard to talk to the upper class, but I could talk to the middle class people. I could talk to working class. I could talk to the poor. Right. And one of the things I'm starting to ask some of my middle class friends, what happens if, God forbid, if you get expensive illness or some type of surgery you need to get? Because we all, even if you're in the middle class and doing well, you one health problem away from being back in the poor.
Yeah.
And you really are. And especially with private insurance, because there's so many loopholes. There's caps on how much they'll pay per year. There's all sorts of stuff that they can get out of paying. There's stuff like you go to the hospital might be in your network, but whoever see you, the doctor might not be in your network, and they might not pay for it. There's a story about that not too long ago where this couple got charged $15,000 for that very same situation. And that's light. Some of these surgeries can run six figures. Literally. So it's in all of our benefits if we have some type of universal system. Because what happens if you cap out with your healthcare, which can happen? What happens? I'm sure people that worked at Bear Stearns at the time didn't think their company was going to go belly up. At least the people that wasn't in management, they didn't see that coming.
This company was around for over 100 years.
Yeah. When they care, like, so
Enron,
right?
MCI,
right. 100%. And there's several companies right now that's in trouble. Just because of changing economy, technology is changing. What happens if you lose your job and the economy is bad? You might not be able to get a job right away. So, like, we can go from middle class to being poor really easily. I mean, most people live in check to check. Most people is what, about 2-3 checks away from that.
Yep. Yep. I mean, like the best example of it, which is unfortunately like used as like a used especially by Democratic people candidates is like an example, but like in a harsh way. Look at automotive industry in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. The American car was the king.
Hmm?
If you worked in an auto factory, you were able to support a family of four off of one income during that period. If you worked on like the Ford plant or a GM plant or something like that, you were able to like take care of everything and everyone in your household and go to college and all that stuff. You were able to do that. And when that industry started getting outside competitors from Japan and Korea in the 80s, and they also started like offshoring like these jobs to like Mexico and so forth, and that industry started like declining in like the 80s and 90s. These people that had jobs that were like perfect and were able to support a family and get their kids into college and pay for college out of their pockets, buy a couple of cars, buy a home, couldn't anymore. And now they were like living destitute and poor. And when I bring up the candidates, like they always say like, well, learn a new trade and all this stuff. I'm like, well, the trade was that they graduated from high school and applied for a job at Ford and were able to support a family of four at Ford for 20 some odd years. And that's now been taken away from them. A lot of like people in the middle class right now, for some reason, can't see that that happening to them, even though it's been a story of America where
Yeah,
we always move forward and move onward.
and that's why I said we have to talk about this and really express like the situation that we in, and also again, it always starts with going back and talking to the youth. Because unfortunately, even with us talking and me giving those examples, a lot of people in their 40s and 50s and even 30s, even 20s, actually,
Yeah.
might be stuck in their mindset. It is really hard for some people that reach a certain age sometimes to change their mind. They're not going to change their mind unless they want to. But when you talking to the youth, especially before they get into the adolescent stage, but even in the adolescent stage, because I used to do mentoring for high school students as well. They have this hysteria. They might talk back and ask a lot of questions, but we were able to get them to think about a lot of different stuff and actually change some courses and directions that some of these kids was going in. So just going back and talking to the youth, that's always good. And just tell them like, where you come from right now, this making these decisions and make your life easier, but don't forget what you had to do to get there. you know that's just one of the things I think we just always gotta have these conversations, because we really don't talk to each other, we talk at each other. So just talking and coming up with real action plans as well help. I'm really want to I'm in the community now, but I want to get deeper into the community. There's stuff like urban farming that we could do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity in agriculture. People always talk about STEM, which is great too. We need that, but there's other stuff as well that we can do. Like I said, one of the people I was talking to today, the guy that I said was talking, that's very smart, that had the blunt in his hand, that didn't even finish high school, was very informative. He was able to go toe to toe with me with these issues. He was he had knowledge. He was he was bringing up stuff to me. I was like, yeah, that's an interesting point. I see how you got there. And we was having a real debate. And most people, you would have looked at him, they would have just wrote him off. So we need to get some of these people at an early age before they get to that stage where they feel like it's lost, because a lot of these people are very smart. A lot of these people, I'm in a better position than they are. And if you want to be honest, a lot of them are smarter than me, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Yeah, man.
It's just like it was just that situation that they was in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you're saying is so crucial, man. Just like you said, have conversations with people, learn about them, and then,
Yeah.
like you said, think about, okay, well, this person thinks like this. Maybe we can talk more and build more. Maybe they can do this. Maybe this is
And
their thing.
and we're not saying that we have all the answers, because these are complicated
Yeah,
issues that been going on for longer than both of us been alive.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm not going to just pretend like, follow me, I'm the Messiah, I have all these answers. A lot of this stuff I'm working on in my head as I'm speaking to you directly right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that mentoring is definitely the answer. But it's not just mentoring, showing up just like, hey kids, whatever, the typical boys and girls club. That stuff is important too. I'm not knocking that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we need is a more direct mentoring. Like more direct, okay, how do you get in these industries? How are we able to build a community?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And Superstar Bella said you guys are very interesting and informative show.
Thank you,
Thank you. I
Superstar
appreciate
Bella.
it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
you're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. I agree totally, man. Like, I think that and the one thing that, like we say, the middle class can do, or people that are winners, is kind of like start, like you said, giving back. Start actually like showing, how did I get here, and helping others get on that path, instead of like just thinking of their own status and protecting their own. Like, nah, man, we all have to get here together. That's the only way that we're going to progress as a community. And you can find people that are like super smart and intelligent, and they might just be like just hanging out at a corner store or a liquor store,
Right.
and you might run into them, and for some reason y'all talk that day, and next thing you know, like, holy crap, like this person really
Yeah.
has a lot going on. Why the hell are they at this corner store? Like, let's learn more, let's
Yep.
build more, let's try to get you out of this
And,
situation.
and this is my last comment before I gotta get out here. My wife is probably about to kill me. Like, hey, I've been watching. It's past your turn to take the baby right now, which it really is. I gotta go in there and make sure my baby's asleep. My daughter is asleep right now. She's going through another little phase right now.
I heard
Yeah,
her
4 months.
earlier. She was crying out. She was asking for some attention.
Yeah. Yeah. She's about 4 months, so
That's
I
right.
gotta go in there in a second. But um, one last thing before I go out here. One of the biggest things we can do as well, when we're going into these communities, because we really need to build successful programs, is to share our failures
Word.
as
Wow.
well.
Wow.
Failure leads to success, because if you read some of these books, right, people mention Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He went bankrupt in his first business. Like, he literally talks about how he went bankrupt, and then he had to regather, and then he came up with he started getting into real estate and came up, whatever. That's just one story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just you see a whole bunch of stories like that. You see people fail all the time. Most people that start their first business fail. It happens. And I think that's one thing. People sometimes are embarrassed to admit failures, and I think we have to start sharing those stories, okay, and letting people know what to avoid and where was your mistakes and how they can do it better. How can they avoid the mistake that you made? Even with people we admire, people put, like, a lot of these famous people, and a lot of them are amazing in their own right on a
Mm-hmm.
level, like they never
Mm-hmm.
made a mistake. All
Mm-hmm.
these people that we talk about and learn about made a mistake. All these people we see on TV made mistakes. So we need to start talking about failures, not in a negative sense, but more of a positive sense, and how can we learn and succeed from them as well.
And to bring it back to politics real quick, if American ever, at least on the foreign policy lens, ever like admitted its failures, we'd be in a much better state on foreign
Yeah,
policy by like a lot.
exactly.
So yeah, understanding your failures, learning from it, and building from it, it's like the only way you can really progress as a person or as a country.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm in the process of trying to work on little on programs here, and I'm gonna let people know whether it's successful um or if it's not successful, if it's somewhere in the middle. I'm gonna let y'all know, and because maybe it's something that y'all can do in y'all areas,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be areas you can improve on
Word,
right
definitely.
now. So I'm working on that now, and as soon as it happens, I'm going to let y'all know, because I have no problem somebody improving on the idea, or if I
Mm-hmm.
was short-sighted, because I'm not a person that going to ever act like I know everything in the world, because I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely don't. And even if my program is a success, I hope somebody can do it better too. And then maybe I can learn and, improve what I'm doing here too. That's what
Word.
we have to do. We have to take ego out of it. We got to stop wanting to be above people and just, talk. And we got to have more of a community. We definitely got to start thinking more as a community and not so individually. Yes, don't be stupid about it. You do have to protect your family.
Right.
So, but like, yes, at a certain level, we gotta start thinking about community and bringing more people like us up.
I totally agree, my man. Like I have nothing else to add to that except I agree. And same here. I've a couple things I'm starting up myself, and
Yeah.
once we're afloat, and yeah, I'm down to like talk more about it because I need to learn. We all make mistakes, and we all need to learn from our mistakes and to do better, not just for me but for somebody else. So yeah, I'm 100% right, man. I have nothing really more to add to that.
All right. Shout out to everybody listening.
Hmm.
Whether you're on YouTube, whether you're listening back on Spotify, please share the show. Definitely trying to grow the channel. I'm me, the pod guy. Get that for the homie Danny Miters, the bar guy who went crazy on Shotgun Shook the other day in battle rap.
Nice.
My man, the bar guy, Danny Myers, finally getting his props. We got my man Heen. We here. Share Polly with us.
All right,
Peace.
y'all. Take care.